Can you tell the difference between these two paintings? Which one is faked? Even if you guessed right, you are not a master art detective. These aren't even real-life forgeries. They're just replicas drawn in Small Worlds, a virtual world where players use what's basically an enhanced version of Microsoft Paint to display their art. To really test your skills, how would you do in a room like this? Here, even most experts would struggle. There's a long history of skilled art forgers passing off their work as real for years at a time, which is why recently scientific methods have been developed to help detect fakes. It's like forensic science for art geeks, but it's not always accurate. Sometimes finding the truth means trusting the intuition of an expert. So how do we tell what's real or fake? And how do forgers keep getting past the experts? Who counts as a good judge of what art is real, and what does this say about our decision-making process in general? Once upon a time, as art dealers would have you know, forgers focused on making art that looked as similar as possible to the original, but they were clumsy with the details. They'd use poorly sourced canvas, cheap frames, newly invented paints, or the wrong labels, and their signatures looked inaccurate. The best of them learned to avoid such telltale mistakes, but now, with the wonders of modern technology, we can detect much subtler slip-ups. By inspecting paint under a microscope, it's possible to tell whether the cracks are natural or induced. A black light can reveal the difference between obsolete varnish and modern varnish and detect recently added signatures. The canvas, frame, and inventory labels can all be dated to help determine the origin of a piece. This is why artbusiness.com advises buyers to familiarize themselves with the appearance of the back and sides of the painting thereafter, so that they can pick up on such details. But like a well-trained magician, the master art forger takes advantage of the expert's keen focus on historic markings, and uses this attentional bias to his advantage. See, contemporary master forgers don't slip up on the details. Take Ken Perrani, today's most famous forger. He's published a memoir, Caveat Emptor, and been interviewed by NPR, The Guardian, CNN, and the New York Times. He's also made millions selling thousands of paintings, and while the FBI has been tracking him for some time, he's never been caught. Why? Because details are his specialty. I pride myself on my forensic expertise, he says. Correct canvas, correct stretchers, period antique frames. I made sure that the backside spoke to experts, that it gave them a history. I had fake stamps, chalk marks, old inventory labels.
It took him years of research and trial and error to learn how to make his copies look old, how to recreate the distinctive spiderweb cracking in the paint or the tiny dots of fly droppings.
Perrani exploits art collectors' sharp eyes for detail, distracting them with small clues that tell them it's an original when the whole painting is a deception. He says he enjoys the addictive thrill of fooling the experts, passing fakes right under their noses. And his little magic trick works because collectors are so certain that the background is the part that will prove them right or wrong. Checking for historical details is an appealing method because, first of all, it's the only part of the art forgery detection process that can be scientific and therefore objective. You can literally count the tree rings in the wood of the frames. You can send samples of paint or pottery clay to the lab for testing. And best of all, these methods return a yes or no answer. The forensic science of art also appeals to our belief that a more detailed picture of the world is a truer picture. We assume that the more facts we gather, the better our judgment. But as Malcolm Gladwell demonstrated in his book, Blink, this is not always the case. According to his theory of thin slicing, the glance of an expert often reveals more truth than hours upon hours of lab study and book research do. One key example in that book was a supposedly ancient Kuros acquired by the Getty Museum. When NYU art history professor Evelyn Harrison first saw the Getty's Kuros, she immediately knew that it was a fake. Lab research, though, gave evidence that it was real. Since then, the results have been mixed, and it's come to be commonly accepted that the statue may be forged. Even the Getty's website says that the statue either dates from 530 BC or is a modern forgery. Psychological research offers a large amount of support for Gladwell's statement that more information doesn't always help our decision-making process and sometimes inhibits it. Keller and Stalin showed that while higher quality of information improves our judgment, higher quantity worsens it. A range of studies throughout the 1960s showed that our judgment ability improves as we learn more, until a point when we have about 10 pieces of information, after which it decreases. And Malhotra suggested that once we pass this threshold, we go into information overload and start using heuristics instead of algorithmically comparing facts. According to a 2009 article, there's also evidence that thin slicing and intuitive processing can improve our detection of deception. So it's possible that Harrison perceived something in that first glance at the Kuros that was not turned up by scientists looking at a large array of physical tests. Yet this leaves us with a much larger question of, whom do we trust to be a good judge? If intuitive processing is effective, whose intuition should it be? Gladwell says, certainly not our own. One must first be an expert in the subject and later use that intuition to make judgment calls. So, is it the physical scientist who can date all the components of a work of art? Or the art historian who has a hunch based on the overall look and continuity of a piece? Or is it the art collector who just does or doesn't feel right about something? We need an expert to tell us yes or no, a judge to synthesize all the conflicting evidence into one estimate and offer us an objective truth, preferably in a box with a bow on it. Art forgers may pride themselves on their beautiful work. Perani certainly does. But besides decorating people's homes to the tune of $700,000, his paintings force us to question how good our judgment is, whom we can trust, and how we can tell the real from the fake. Like a renowned psychic retiring to become a stage magician, Ken Perani has now retired to life as an honest liar, selling his paintings as reproductions. They now earn about 1/20th of the prices they used to, but it keeps the FBI off his back. And, Perani gloats, there are at least 1,000 of his paintings still at auction houses around the world being sold as if they were originals. By revealing to us the careful art of deception, Perani leaves us with the chilling realization that some tricks will never be discovered. Not by historians, not by the careful inspections of scientific experts, and certainly not by the easily overloaded brains of the average buyers. Caveat emptor. Buyers beware.